And the one thing that I haven't mentioned that I should have is my mental function on this diet versus how it was. I didn't realize how bad it was prior to this. And I was just forgetting names, like things that it was kind of one of those things you were just chalking it up as, oh, I'm just stressed or I'm getting old, even though I was only, 30 years old at the time. I thought that was just it. But now when your brain is actually operating on a level that it should be, it's so much better. I had low libido and ED issues. I had all those issues when I was doing the carbs, when I was doing all of that. And then now it's completely kind of flipped around.
Okay, good morning, folks. Happy Wednesday morning to you guys. We have a guest today. Trevor is here. Trevor, I see you. I think I'll just have to see if I can get you to you're unmuted, looks like. So good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Good morning. Yes, I can. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. Happy to be here. Glad to have you. Where are you located, Trevor?
So Lancaster, Ohio. So it's just south of Columbus. I don't know if you're familiar, but small town.
Well, the only thing I know about Columbus, Ohio, obviously, but I mean, I know that's a big popular place for powerlifting.
Yeah, that's very true.
Louis Simmons has his gym there too. Westside Barbell is out of Columbus too, and kind of followed that stuff for years. So, well, thank you for doing this. First of all, if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background? Where'd you grow up? How'd you grow up? What was going on?
So born and raised in Lancaster. Grew up, playing sports, football. The typical kid thing, I guess, or we'll call it typical kid thing. Yeah. Went to the Marine Corps, did a little bit of college, own a gym now. That's pretty much it. Okay. So served in the Marine Corps, like I said, 4 years. And I guess that's a brief overview of me.
Okay. So you've been always sort of active then, an athlete, gym owner, obviously you probably train, I would imagine. I mean, I would hope so, but so what, obviously you're here on our Carnivore podcast for a reason. I assume you starting to use diet or something along those lines. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And I guess we can kind of, if you don't mind, segue. So athlete my whole life. When I was a little kid, I obviously ate like crap, seed oils, constantly deep fryer type food, Tyson chicken, that stuff. Mm-hmm. But as I got older, I kind of fell into what I like to call the bro diet, the chicken and rice. And I consistently did this because I was doing a little bit of modeling, bodybuilding, and stuff like that. However, my fat remained extremely low. I believe that's really what kind of led me to getting really sick, obviously with the antibiotics and all that stuff as a kid. But yeah, that was the diet that ultimately plunged me just into a spiral of sickness.
Yeah. And what was that sickness? You said spiral of sickness.
So, I have so many things. I would say probably like 100+ things. However, the worst ones, I would say, I forgot who my wife and family were. I had episodes of like passing out, not hitting the ground, but you couldn't have a conversation with me. It was almost like I was just like a statue. I was bedridden for 3 months, muscle wasting. I put no energy, exhaustion, headache, extremely high cortisol, consistent brain fog, anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, loss of balance. I had paralysis in half my body at times. It was just insane. It was almost like I experienced everything that you could when your body was just giving up.
And over how long of a period was this going on?
So it was probably like a 2-year period from first symptoms, which were the passing out, to, kind of now being the 2 years where pretty much all of those are completely gone.
Let me ask you, because when you first started, feeling this as a young, otherwise, you're still young person, active, healthy, former Marine, gym goer. You had to think, well, what the hell's going on? Did you go to doctors and did they think viral illness, or what were they thinking? What did they have a thought, or did you go?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I saw so many, and it was only due to my wife. So I kind of carried that Marine like mentality. I was like, no, I'm good. Mm-hmm. But the episodes of passing out, like just that statue, it started happening when I would like be driving. So it started happening in very unfortunate situations that you just wouldn't want it to happen. So finally, I did end up going, and I went to the ER, and that was the first of many visits. I even wrote here, I had 2 neurologists, cardiologists, psychiatrists. I was referred to an endocrinologist, an oncologist, I can't say that word right now, but and then 3 holistic docs. So I saw everyone under the sun. I mean, they cut, prodded, poked me. They did everything.
And I mean, was there a supposed diagnosis? Did they say, we think you have this or that? Or was there, what were they entertaining?
So everyone was entertaining that I was just extremely depressed. That's all they wanted to say.
Okay. So kind of a psychosomatic type of illness probably. And so did they put you on antidepressants or offer to do that?
So I was a VA patient. I was, because I no longer go through the VA, but they gave me, it was kind of an allergy type depression medicine. I can't remember what it's called, but they even told me that the main things it was for was like an allergy, but it has been shown to improve depression or mood. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird.
And what was the medication again? You remember?
I can't remember what it was called. It was one of those things that they'd sent me, and I didn't have any interest in taking it, because at this point I had kind of started studying, and they were like, yeah, there's really no studies outside of 3 months on this medication. I was like, yeah, I don't want to do that.
Okay. Because you mentioned, I mean, briefly, and I don't want to diminish this, you mentioned suicidality, which is obviously very, very concerning. And, obviously we should never ignore that. And, I'm glad you had support around you. Can you think of a reason why you might have been depressed if it was depression? I mean, you mentioned Marines a lot of guys in the military suffer from PTSD and things like that. Were any of that stuff going on, or what was, why do you think this happened? I mean, you think it was maybe just I was eating a crappy diet and this is what happens, or what do you think? Was there an event in your life that maybe led to some of that stuff?
I kind of think it all compiled on top of each other. Obviously, bad health. You can start getting into your toxin bucket, right? I'm sure you probably heard that, but mine was just overflowed, vaccines, all kind of stuff that I personally believe in could kind of tip the scales. And then, you start getting into the emotional side of things. I went through a pretty crazy divorce when I got back from the military. So it was just kind of everything compiled and things that I neglected.
And during this time, how long ago was this? This is 2 years ago?
So this would be, I'm considering right now the 2 years. So yeah, trace back about 2 years.
So 2 years ago. Okay. So this is right in the middle of our pandemic type time. And were you still owning a gym and actively going to the gym and trying to do that stuff?
So no, I still own the gym throughout this whole thing, which luckily I have amazing staff. My wife, she picked up so much. I couldn't do anything. So I was bedridden for 3 months. So pretty much for a year, I didn't work. So that was really hard on us financially. And not to mention, there's so many things I could say, but we spent probably like $30,000 on supplements. And I did go through schooling under a doctor, kind of learn functional health to try to really pull myself out of this. But yeah, we basically spent our life savings, and I didn't work. So she held the fort down.
And just how old are you while this is going on? 2 years ago. So, how old
30.
are you?
I was like 30, 31. Yep.
You were 30, 31. Okay. So very young to be going through stuff like that. And when you said you're bedridden for 3 months, what kept you in bed? Was it pain? Was it just energy, or why couldn't you get out of bed?
All the above. Depression did have something to do with it too. Even if you asked me at the time, I was like, I'm not depressed. I just feel awful. So pain, energy, like not feeling things. Like there would be days I would wake up and it's like I couldn't feel my legs. I couldn't understand it. I remember going downstairs to my wife, and the disassociation was the scariest. I remember asking her, like, am I alive or am I dead? I don't understand, because I can't comprehend. Like my brain had a hard time kind of just wrapping around the normal ideals of life. It was so crazy for me.
And during this time, you're eating what you call a bro diet, a bodybuilding diet the whole time. Is that what's your diet looking like while all this stuff is going on?
So that the bro diet was what kind of led me up to this point. And it's honestly, so I've been a personal trainer ever since I was like 19, 20. So I had been in a little of nutrition, or what I thought was the ideal diet. But at this point, I started going the vegetarian, vegan, medical medium. I don't know if you've heard of him, but those type diets, because that is what was praised to be the healthiest and to rid your body of disease. So I started diving into that, and yeah,
Yeah, this is the celery juice cleanse guy is one of the medical medium guys. So I mean, and there's a lot of that out there. I mean, if you're, like if you go to the medical route and you get no relief, I mean, hey, you're just depressed, and we do a bunch of tests, and we don't know, we'll shake your head. Then you kind of out of desperation go follow these other things, and it's just normal. I mean, I don't blame somebody for doing that because doctors can't help you, which often they can't. Then you're left on your own devices, and where do you go? Well, you just look what's popular. So you try this medical medium, whatever, kind of semi-plant-based route. How did that fare for you?
So it's one of those things that you're ignorant, right? Because you want to believe something so bad. So I was doing it. I probably did it, I don't know, for 3 months. I was losing my hair. I probably lost like 40 pounds. So and when you were doing it for fun, what were you doing? What exactly did you have to do during this 3-month period of time? Like, what were you eating, drinking, supplementing? What was going on? So it's all plants. It's basically no fat. They demonize, protein and fat really outside of coming from plant sources. So a lot of potatoes, celery, obviously that's what you start in the morning. And then you start with a detox smoothie is what they call, but it's basically like spirulina, dulse, Atlantic dulse, and blueberries, and like I think mangoes and stuff like that. Just kind of a high sugar punch in the face right in the morning,
If I had to get out of bed and I had to start my day with celery, I'd probably stay in bed too, man.
Yeah. That was the ignorance of me convincing myself that this was the way to go. And it only made me worse, to be honest.
Okay. So that didn't happen. So at what point, or how did you discover, or when did you decide to, well, I mean, obviously after a few months saying this clearly is not working for me, when did you decide to go to the meat-based, animal-based carnivore route? What prompted you to go there, and how did that work?
Yeah. So from there, I went to a fruitarian. I don't know if you've heard of that term. I'm sure you have.
Sure. Yeah. Fruitarian.
Because the idea was I'm just not doing it hard enough. So I went fruitarian for probably a month, and it just kept going downhill. I was losing my hair, no libido, just experiencing all the bad things a man can experience. Yeah. And then
what was your body weight and body composition after doing this? Did you lose some muscle and size, or were you skinny fat, or what was going on?
Yeah, I looked awful. In months, we'll say 6 months to a year after, people were telling me that I looked like I had cancer, but nobody would tell me to my face. I would ask everyone, I'm like, how do I look? Like, I just want the truth because I feel like death. So I probably weighed 160 at 5'10", which necessarily doesn't sound, that's small, but I'm consistently a 200-pound, 205-pound guy. I mean, I weighed it in high school, so I've never really been any skinnier. In boot camp, I was 190. Yeah.
So that's 30 pounds down. Well, I mean, and you'd lost some of that prior to the diet. I mean, how much was directly from the diet at 3 months of the diet? How much did you lose during that time?
Oh, so I lost, within that time of transitioning, I probably lost 5-10 pounds initially when I started getting sick, and just how much I was trying to push. And then after that, it was like it all just ripped off in a couple months.
Okay. So this medical medium diet, it was good for losing
weight and losing your mind.
Losing weight, losing your mind, losing muscle, that type of stuff, which, it's just this basically high sugar, very low protein, low fat diet. It's not probably good for mental health, and it's certainly not good for maintaining lean mass, I would imagine. But you can get skinny on that. So that's maybe why you have these women that want to be obsessively skinny, and they do these juice detox cleanses or things like that. All right. So, okay, let's talk about what got you interested in, obviously that's not working. So why didn't you you could have went a lot of other routes. You could have went Mediterranean diet or something like that, or, calorie count, or if it fits your macros type of thing. What made you go animal based? Because a lot of people say, well, that's extreme. It's unnecessary. Why would you do that? Well, why would you do that?
I started through this whole process. Like I said, I started learning, I started studying under a naturopathic doctor. I started slowly progressing towards, because I did do the Mediterranean diet. I started including more meat, more protein, went a little keto, not really. And then I went animal based, Paul Saladino. So I started doing that, and that really helped, to be honest with you. So that transition really helped. My body started getting the nutrients it needed as far as, the protein and the fat. However, I still had yeast. So yeast has always been an extreme issue of mine. And I do a lot of my own testing now, which back then I used to think it was vital. Now, not so much. So I did show, SIBO and SIFO, whatever term you want to give to those, but yeast was a huge issue. And I noticed the amount of fruit I was eating, things were getting worse on my body. So like toenail fungus, tinea versicolor, I believe it's called, the white patches that you'll get on your skin from yeast, it was growing. And I was just really itchy. So I started cutting out the fruit, and honestly, all that stuff started going away as well.
Okay, so for you, the excess amount of fruit on the so-called animal-based diet was just not working well, or at least there were still issues with that. Okay, so yeah. When did you decide? I guess you decided to go at some point, just full on carnivore at some point.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I've been carnivore now for 6 months. So this is going on to my 7th month, and honestly, for the most part, I feel completely better. You know, I will have some days, depending on what happens, if I try to introduce something, because I still might have some histamine issues here and there. But for the most part, if I just stayed beef and salt, I probably would never have any issues.
Yeah, so interesting. So, you know, by obviously getting off the stupid medical medium diet and including more animal source foods, but including some plants like fruits and other things like that, it was better. But, you know, the difference going fully animal-based or fully carnivore was quite a bit better. Is that fair to say for you, at least in your case?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
What, you know, so you had the, you know, tinea versicolor and some of the things. Did that improve by going fully carnivore?
Yeah, so it's not completely gone, but it was getting to the point where it initially, you know, started on my chest. And then when I had all the fruit, it started going down my arms. And now it's clearing up to where it's just barely on my chest. So it is completely going better. I mean, it used to be up my neck, and now it's no longer there. So, yeah. And a lot of things with high yeast, you know, you'll still have some brain fog issues. So that went away as well.
Okay, and you said your wife has been very supportive this whole time. Has she been supportive through your various dietary adventures and misadventures? What's been going on with that?
Oh my goodness, yeah. So poor girl, because it's one of those things where you're like, Eureka, I found it. Each time you kind of like cling to something, right? So she's been along the whole time. She's like, oh, this is good, but now it's bad. And so she's been extremely supportive. You know, it takes a toll on somebody when she's heard some of the worst stuff. Like I said, you know, when we kind of mentioned it, suicidal tendencies, she heard like, there's one time I was just like, I no longer want to do this. I want out, you know, and that's hard to hear as a spouse. So she's had to endure all that pain, and she's really held it together, not only financially for our family, but, you know, mentally and everything as well.
Yeah, it's tough because, you know, like, and I don't get sick very often, but when I'm, or, you know, injured or something, but the few times that happens to me, my better half, she probably feels worse than I do about it. Like she's like, I'm like, it's no big deal. I'll be fine. She's more concerned than I'm. So it can beat up your spouse, you know, pretending on who they are. You know, they just don't like to see the people around them in pain or sick or suffering. And, you know, some people, you know, like I said, I'm less concerned with my own pain than others. You know, in many cases, I'm like, it's fine. I'm okay. It's a scratch or something like that. It's a flesh wound type of thing, right? You just got to suck it up and go on. And some of that's just who you are. And I'm sure as a Marine, you probably have some of that. I mean, they kind of, you know, teach you that, you know, you gotta toughen up a little bit. So, well, just for instance, what does you said 6 months now carnivore, what does that look like for you? What are you eating with that?
So like today, I'll just rattle off for today. So I like to fast. I've been playing a little more with the fasting game, and I have introduced coffee. Now it's not a necessity, but me and my wife will have a cup of coffee, and we'll do our readings, our devotions. And it's kind of just the experience that I enjoy, the environment. So that's why I do still have a little bit of coffee. Obviously, I'm very particular about what I'm drinking. But I ate my breakfast about an hour ago, I would say, after the gym. So fasted gym session and then breakfast. And I had 10 eggs and 4 burgers, like a pack of 4 burgers.
Mm-hmm. Is that for the day, or is that one meal? Or you got
That's just one meal. And then I'll probably eat again around 3 or 4 and have something similar, maybe throw in a little bacon. Mm-hmm. And the only time it's really different is if I work out, I'll work all day because we just got a house, so I'm renovating that. And then if I have jujitsu at night, I might need a little more calories, but I just play it by ear and what my body wants. I'm no longer kind of idolizing food like I used to, especially when I was a bodybuilder. It's crazy what you don't know.
How does this sort of carnivore, obviously carbohydrates are minimal. I mean, there's half a gram of carbohydrates in eggs, I suppose, but you're not getting any realistic, appreciable source of carbohydrates. How's your training now compared to bro diet, higher carb diet? Is it worse, better, the same? What are your thoughts?
I would say it's a lot better, especially, at least for me, there was a adaptation phase, right? From your body transitioning from all those sugars to fat, and, you might have the diarrhea kind of thing. But right now I'm probably the strongest I've been at the lightest.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people comment that. I mean, it's often, a lot of people find it's easier to get lean, but you maintain that mass because all that high quality protein you're getting. Not that on a bodybuilding diet you can't get protein, because chicken breasts and tuna and protein powders. I mean, protein is usually there. I mean, the bodybuilders know to emphasize protein, but there seems to be something, maybe better gut health. Maybe the fat has additional benefits hormonally. I mean, all these things we know are potentially there. So now, are you still back to training people, owning the gym, training people, or what are you doing these days?
Yeah, so I do train people. I'm also an online coach, and I kind of directed that more towards a functional health kind of aspect, as far as mentally, spiritually, just all the above, physically. And then me and my wife kind of do some things as well. So we're renovating a house, and then we have a couple other businesses, but we stay busy. And the one thing that I haven't mentioned that I should have is my mental function on this diet versus how it was. I didn't realize how bad it was prior to this. And I was just forgetting names, like things that it was kind of one of those things you were just chalking it up as, oh, I'm just stressed, or I'm getting old, even though I was only, 30 years old at the time. I thought that was just it. But now when your brain is actually operating on a level that it should be, it's so much better.
Yeah, that's something. Let me ask you, as far as the diet, when you were on the bro diet, how much of it was red meat? Because now it sounds like you're eating just red meat every single day. Were you more steered to like chicken and those types of fish and that type of stuff?
Oh, yeah. So I was strict chicken, no fat. And so I kind of did the bodybuilding modeling thing I was in a calorie restrictive type diet for 3 years. And I was extremely lean, probably way too lean for that time as well. And it was just lean chicken. My fat was probably under 50 grams, around 30 grams. So extremely unhealthy. My body was just basically fighting. It was on a cortisol high.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's, I think, some decent evidence that supports that if you get your total percentage of calories under 20% fat, you run into some significant problems. And it sounds like you're probably in that range, so that is a problem. And, like when you get down, sub 6% body fat, whatever, bodybuilders stepping on stage at 4%, they're like, it is a very tenuous physiologic place. And a lot of people don't feel good that way. And maintaining that for a long period of time is just not doable for most people. And, of course, obviously they're using a lot of drugs to help them get there in many cases, to maintain the mass. But that's the funny thing for me. I'm like, I can get big and strong, but I can't get ripped and big and strong. You got the trade-off. You can be lean or you can be big, and you can't have both in many, at least as a natural guy. But right now I'm doing the big thing. Yeah. I'm about 260, but I'm not as lean, but I'm strong, which is nice. I like being the strong part.
And you're healthy.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's the other thing, is being healthy. But let me ask you, when you deal with people now, are you suggesting more animal-based diets, carnivore diets? Are you when you work with your clients?
Yes, it's 100%. So I always give people the option, and I never want to immediately kind of push them one way or the other, but I will share my experiences and what I believe to be true based on everything I've researched and done, because I've spent, 2-3 years now just researching, listening to everyone's podcasts and kind of going based on primitive studies. And so I do direct people towards it if they're receptive to listening.
Yeah, fair enough. And as far as, you'd mentioned obviously depression, suicidality at some point. How do you feel mentally these days?
So I'm great. I tell people all the time, I'm back to me, but a better version, because I'm a higher functioning version of myself. And as far as like depression, anxiety, it's like, it's not there. Now, I believe as a species, do we get depressed about things we get down? Yes. But at the same time, when you're healthy, you're able to handle those. It's not like you just stay in that, and then you're not getting out of bed, and then you do have those tendencies. So yeah, I don't have any of that anymore.
Yeah, it's really, obviously there's grief. I mean, you lose a spouse or kid or something, or somebody, it's going to happen. It's going to make people sad, and they're going to have a grieving period. That's completely normal. If you don't have it, that might be unnormal. You might think about that. That's weird not to have that. But yeah, a lot of people will say on carnivore, some people call it a zero carb Zen or carnivore calm, or I generally feel like I'm generally pretty happy. It's kind of my baseline is kind of moderately happy, chilled out. And that's kind of the baseline. Would that be fair to say for you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of how I like to present myself, and I would say how I'm known to people around me is I'm optimistic and cheery, and I just enjoy life. That's how I always was until I was sick, and then it was like a complete 180.
And how's your wife? Is she like on board totally now? She noticed a change? Is she happy with where you're at? Is she like totally like, here's another steak, eat up, type of thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, she's not on the diet herself. She has transitioned to eating more meat, but as far as me, she loves it. Yeah. And she's definitely seen the improvements.
Yeah. And I can imagine that's got to make a huge difference in just everything. You can feel like you're more, before when you're leaning on her so hard to do everything because you're basically bedridden, and now you can kind of participate, and it's got to take the strain off the relationship and that type of stuff. And you feel guilty about putting all the work on someone else sometimes. But okay, a lot of people say, well, this diet is too expensive, and you said eggs and ground beef and bacon. Is that too expensive for you, or how does that compare to previous diets? You said your medical medium, all these supplements, got to be cheaper than that. Is that fair to say?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Like I said, granted there was some schooling thrown in there. I spent $30,000 on supplements, and I'm not even sure if that was all our food thrown in there for the medical medium way of life and the vegan, the vegetarian, all that stuff. So it's really cheap when you think about it, especially if it's all you eat. So I think I just bought half a cow for $1,600. It'll be delivered in January, and I'll eat that for at least 6 months. So if you really kind of divvy it up, that's in my eyes, that's cheap compared to what I was doing.
Yeah, that's clearly true. But I think a lot of people, even, if they start cutting out just all the junk food and all the fruit and vegetables that go bad and all that stuff, by the time that you add it up, for many people, it tends to be pretty economical. I may be an exception because I'm eating 3 or 4 pounds of steak every day just because I'm in a fortunate position I can do that. But for most people, ground beef and eggs, and I do that from time to time. Certainly when I'm traveling, I often eat ground beef. It's very, I think, affordable for most Americans anywhere. Most that I can say that pretty reasonably. And a lot of people around the world are able to do this, but not unfortunately. Is there any? I don't know what Ohio. You said Langston, Ohio. I don't know what the community is like. Is it a big plant-based? Everybody needs to go plant-based thing. Are you going to push from that, or is it more kind of normal people that just want to eat normal food? What's going on there with that area?
Yeah, so I would say specifically my area is kind of smaller town. So the SAD diet, the fast food type convenient diet is probably the most prevalent. Sorry. A lot of people, because I do have a gym, so I do have influence in the community, and I'm constantly sharing about this diet, and people just think I'm kind of crazy at this point. Some people are asking based on, they saw me basically looking deathly ill, and then now they're seeing me 6 months later, and I have all my muscle back. I'm at the strongest point, and they're kind of like, "What's going on with you?"
Yeah. That's it's always nothing speaks like results. That's a thing that people get interested when they see you. And you said you were normally walking around at 200, and you got down to 160s or something like that. Where are you at now? Where's your weight at these days?
So yeah, I'm back up to 200. Still fairly lean. I would still say I'm under 10%, to be honest, at this point. And I don't even have to work. The other thing is I don't have to work out nearly as hard either, because when I was doing the chicken and rice diet, I was working out twice a day, cardio for 40, 60 minutes. And then I was working doing strength training for probably another hour and a half. So I was just taxing my body to the extreme level.
Do you find, I mean, that's what I see a lot of people comment, and maybe that's the case for you, that do you have to train as hard to get the same results, or do you find you can get away with training a little less and still produce the same results?
Oh, absolutely. So I can definitely train a little less. It's kind of crazy that it's working out like that. I can go to the gym, do a 30-minute session. I mean, not taking any breaks, kind of getting after it. And like I said, I'll be stronger than I was at a leaner weight. So my body is just adapting to many things a lot better.
Yeah, that's been my experience too. I find that I still train hard, but I've trained harder in the past, but I don't need to. It's just like I stay strong and it's easier to do, which is kind of nice because it frees you up time for other things and that type of stuff. You know, obviously when you're doing the bro diet, you know, it's a lot about calorie tracking and macronutrient tracking, things like that. Are you still paying attention to that at all? Are you like making sure I hit X amount of protein a day, or do you care about that?
So the only time I do is to share either with my clients or I'll share online to kind of just open everyone's eyes, because when I was doing the chicken and rice diet, I think my calories, oh my goodness, were anywhere from 2,000 to maybe never above 3,000. And consistently, I'm probably 3,500 to 5,000 calories a day, depending on my expenditure, right? So how many calories I need. And I just show people that. And when your fat's through the roof and it goes against what people have said for so long, I kind of want people to see that and then kind of, you know, look at me and see it works.
Yeah, that's something and yeah, that's, you know, like I said, 3,500 to 5,000 calories. So you're not hungry. I mean, you know, it's fair to say you're not starving yourself, which is good. A lot of people, you know, they associate going on a diet with hunger and, you know, restriction and you know, I mean, what about the people that says, well, don't you miss pizza? What about chocolate cake? You know, what do you say to those people? Isn't it boring, eating the same thing all the time?
So no, I do not miss those things. And I guess this goes back to kind of the chicken rice diet. So when you're a bodybuilder, you have quote unquote cheat meals, right? And that's the only time I would really eat those things, but it was at a very unhealthy level. So I would eat like a pan of brownies and then an entire large pizza in one sitting. So I just made myself feel completely awful. And then now I really don't have the cravings for anything. I crave more so, you know, a well-cooked steak and salt or something like it.
Yeah, that's been something that I think has been uniquely beneficial for the carnivore. You know, some people talk about this on the ketogenic diet with appetite suppression. I think the carnivore even brings that up a notch in my view. Are you concerned? Okay, so this is the thing. You're only, you know, early 30s. You know, it's not something most people think about. What about, you know, the people say, well, what about heart disease? You know, you're obviously your cholesterol might go up or something like that because you're eating all this saturated fat. Are you concerned about that? Are you worried about that? How do you? I don't know. I don't know what you need to, but I mean, how do you rationalize or justify that concern?
So one, I don't believe in it. Just kind of based on all the research that I've done personally. So, you know,
so let me ask you specific. You don't believe in it. I mean, you don't believe that it raises your cholesterol, or you don't believe that eating higher cholesterol causes heart disease. You don't believe that higher cholesterol in the context of a healthy diet causes heart disease. What would be fair to say?
So that one. So,
okay.
Yes, will your cholesterol raise 100%, but I also believe it's extremely important for it to be higher than what we have kind of said to be the healthy state.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at most cardiologists, they'll recommend an LDL cholesterol below 100, which is quite low. I mean, it's historically much lower than humans have typically been. Okay. So your thought is it doesn't need to be that low, perhaps.
No. And now I go back to like primitive. If we had to survive, what would we do? You know, I live in Ohio right now. There's snow on the ground. I wouldn't find any fruits or vegetables. I would have to go kill my meat and I would be looking for a fattier portion. I wouldn't care outside of that. So it makes sense, honestly, the more you dig into it. And to be honest, the more you can simplify it, right? We take something that we have made so complicated. And if we just kind of break it down to simple things, it's easy, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair. That's fair enough. And I think as far as, you know, because people say, I mean, because this is a point, people, well, you're not a cardiologist, you're not a doctor. What do you know about LDL cholesterol? But at the same point, you know your own body and you have an opinion on quality of life and, you know, those types of things. So I think it's a valid concern. It's like, you know, you can say, I recommend this as a physician, but at the same time, I understand you have sovereignty over your own body and you can choose what you like. And like I said, if somebody would say, hey, change your diet, go on a low-fat diet, or maybe take a drug, it might have negative consequences, and it might put you back to where you were. Maybe you're back to being suicidal again, which is obviously not a good place to be. And so I think it's just an important discussion to have. And whether or not ultimately this turns out to be increasing our risk for heart disease or not, that point still is valid, personal sovereignty and quality of life. And again, I'm like you, I'm skeptical that this will definitely make people increase the risk for heart disease, particularly people that start off unhealthy. And we see them lose weight, and we see their blood pressure normalizing, their blood glucose normalizing, their inflammatory markers normalizing, their visceral fat goes away, and their mental health improve, on and on and on. You guys have all heard me talk about this and seen this in real time many, many times. Have you had any trouble with the diet? 'Cause some people report transition, GI trend. You said a little bit, maybe there's a transition with energy. What kind of issues did you have transitioning?
Yeah, actually, something I want to throw in before I get to that question is when I was on the medical medium vegetarian type diet, I did blood work. So I did blood work kind of before and then after, and even functional medicine testing. And I wish I had it pulled up, but all of my blood work when I was on a vegetarian diet would look like I had heart disease. I had all these issues because they were just through the roof, and I was consuming no fat. I was consuming, no fat, no real animal protein. So
I mean, as far as through the roof, I mean, maybe I could see where triglycerides would be quite high. Is that what were you saying was through the roof?
Yeah. So triglycerides, even my ApoB.
Okay. Your
so
ApoB,
yeah, all those things were up. And like my lipase was extremely low. My elastase, like everything, my body was just showing signs of not doing well. Mm-hmm. And they were just saying, oh, you look healthy. That's constantly what they were saying. You look healthy. So it was, yeah.
Wait a minute.
I guess I have.
Who said you looked healthy? Because you were saying you felt like you were skinny and weak and looked like death. So who was saying you look healthy?
That's what most of the doctors were saying to me, that I look healthy. I mean, because I guess they'd never seen me prior, but everyone else around me, knew that wasn't the case.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, and I think people fail to realize this. When you start to lose muscle, lean mass, that is a sign of disease. And many people, it's a sarcopenic type of thing. And, it's kind of one of those things, I'm not talking giant steroid physique, but I'm just saying having a decent amount of lean mass, it's generally, it requires health to maintain that, to get that. It's, sufficient nutrition, sufficient training. And when you start just getting skinny, I mean, relative to the average person, because everybody's so damn fat, if you're not fat, they're like, well, you got to be healthy, which is not necessarily the case. We have people on the opposite end of the spectrum. And so I can imagine, how did that, I mean, let me ask you mentally, you go from 200 pounds, relatively strong, down to 160. I mean, that personally would make me not feel good. Did you feel like vulnerable, weak, threatened, anxious because of losing all that muscle?
Oh, I mean, there's so many things. So my testosterone crashed too. That was a test. So everything you can experience, especially being a man, right? So you're no longer working or making income for your household. You're no longer taking care of your wife. There's no romance in a relationship, and you lost, 40 pounds, 40 plus pounds. So it's pretty much, you're just like, who am I? You come to like, I've lost everything that, I've built, or I would have described myself to be. Like, you just completely lose everything. So yeah, it was really tough.
Yeah. And I don't know, like I said, because, you do what you want to do, but, you care. Like my spouse in particular, she is like, when I got super lean, she's like, I don't like you that way. She's like, and people are like, you look like a cancer patient. And I got all the way down to low 200, a little under 210, which was, for me at 6'5", that's friggin' skinny. I mean, there's 6 foot guys that are 210, they walk around all the time. But for me, that's ridiculously skinny. I mean, that's like 55 pounds leaner than I am now. And I was like, I didn't like that at all. And I kind of did intentionally. I was just playing with eating a low calorie, high fat, lower protein diet, watching my blood glucose bottom out, just playing with that. And then I kind of carried it along longer than I should have. I looked and felt pretty good at about 235, and then I just kept going down and down and down and playing to see how lean can you get. And I got lean, the leanest I've ever been in my life, but I felt like a cancer patient, and I just didn't feel good that lean. I mean, and that particularly that skinny and that weak, it just was just weird for me. I'm just not used to that. I'm used to being fit and strong. Well, let's talk about electrolyte issues. Are you having any cramps or electrolyte? Do you take an electrolyte? Do you salt your food? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I take the Relight electrolytes, and I typically do that 1 to 2 times a day, again, based on expenditure. And I did have the cramps because I wasn't doing it at first. I wasn't adding that. And I wasn't adding a lot of salt either initially. So I did experience some cramping, mainly at night. I would, kind of maneuver, and then I'd catch a horrible calf cramp or something. But now I really don't deal with any of those issues. So
yeah. So it seems like, and like I said, in Relight, I think that's a Redmond real salt product. And then obviously there's another Elements one that I often use, particularly when I'm sweating a lot. I find that that's something for me. If I'm out sweating in the gym, I find that I need to keep my at least salt things. And so that's just a convenient way to do that. You said you do a lot of fasting and fasted training. What is the rationale for doing that right now? Are you trying to lean out? Or are you trying to, is there other benefit for that you're trying to obtain by doing that?
So I do believe there's benefit for fasting, kind of the windows where our body's not necessarily always fed. I believe then, autophagy, all those terms that you kind of throw out there, I believe, we might experience some of those. However, I like to just go a little bit in the morning without thinking of food, without eating, and kind of just, reading, doing some things. And it's kind of just one of those things, how long can I take this, and when do I need to eat? Like, it's no longer, I have to wake up and I have to have a meal. It has to be this. I just want to listen to my body. So if it's 7 a.m. and I want to eat, then I'll eat. But if it's also 1, in the afternoon and I want to eat, then that's when I'll eat.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think there's a difference between intermittent fasting, 16, 18 hours and doing these 48, 72-hour things, which for an athlete, I think that can be kind of productive, particularly if you're doing that frequently. I just don't see that as a good strategy for maintenance of lean mass for many people. I think it's more for, I think, people losing weight or obese people. I think you have a better benefit for that. But that's just my thoughts. I guess I like to eat too. Maybe that's why. I just don't like not eating. I tried that. I remember on 48 hours one time after interviewing this guy, Cole Robinson, the snake diet guy, and he said, well, you just eat enough for 2 days and then don't eat for 2 days. So for me, that equaled 8 pounds of food. And so I ate 8 pounds of food in one meal, which I literally felt like a snake that swallowed a goat. I was so stuffed I couldn't move for 3 hours. And then I didn't eat for 2 days. And I was like, okay, but I didn't enjoy it one bit. I was like, one, I didn't like being stuffed like a goat, like a snake. And the other thing is I just didn't, I would rather just kind of break it up more, but that's just me. Would you advise, do you think the medical medium would be of benefit to anybody out there? Is there anybody you think that would benefit from his advice, or doing celery juice, smoothie, sugar detoxes, or do you think that's just all garbage?
So I do think it's garbage, and I'm sorry if, that's stepping on your toes. However, I mean, I guess if you were eating McDonald's every day for every meal, it would be an improvement, I guess, but I definitely think it is garbage at this point.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, because a lot of people criticize the carnivore diet because we have such a baseline bad diet in this country. Everybody's eating junk. 60% of our calories come from ultra processed food. It's just, refined sugar and, refined grain and, just junk food across the board is what makes up the most people's diet. And so any tweak to that is likely to provide a benefit. And the people who are critical of carnivore diet will say, well, it's just because you're cutting out these ultra-processed foods that you're making an improvement, but actually meat is bad for you and unhealthy. You're going to give you heart disease and cancer and shorten your life and you weren't eating a lot of junk food, though. I mean, if I understand you correctly, you said you occasionally had a cheat day, but you'd been on this bro bodybuilding chicken and rice diet, which is not a high-processed food diet outside of cheat days, for many years. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't I guess going out of my way to stay away from things, that could have a lot of seed oils and stuff like that, because I didn't know that at the time, but I was doing what I thought was healthy in the space. However, it was just the one meal on that one day where I would eat just an insane amount of food. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't living, extremely unhealthy, or so I thought. I think it just, my body caught up, like all the toxins caught up with me.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was doing these cyclic ketogenic diets at a point we'd have the carb refeed days. And you know, for my body weight and size, I had to consume something like 900 to 1,000 grams of carbohydrates. And so I was eating boxes of cereal and big giant things, oatmeal with banana and maple syrup. I was just gorging. And those days I felt awful. I mean, I was like, oh my God, I feel miserable. I just felt, you know, sick to my stomach. My digestive system was off. And the thought was it would help you perform in the gym better, you know, in the days around it. You'd get a super physiologic glycogen load. And I never felt better. I didn't perform any better. My guts were hurting too much. I just like, ugh. So I didn't like doing those cheat days or those refeed days to any significant to effect. And then the other thing I played with was targeted ketogenic diets where just around workouts, you'd include a little bit of carbohydrate. And I remember it was like a shot of maple syrup, and I think I had MCT oil with that and something else maybe. And it was just, I didn't notice any benefit. It was just weird. I just feel better on friggin' just straight meat, which a lot of people find that really, really hard to comprehend, but that's the way I work. And I've been able to do some really, I think, physically good things with that. So, do you have any, advice you would have for people starting out on this diet that, you know, mistakes that often people see that people make that they could avoid?
Yeah, I would probably say transition, unless you have to transition slow. So meaning, if you're coming from a very sickly state and you believe to be this your cure-all, maybe transition fast and then throw some digestive enzymes, HCl or something in there to kind of help. Mm-hmm. But transition slow, and just stick with it, to be honest, because it works. I mean, in my experience, it works. Everyone who does go on it that I know, it's working for them. So
how long, and just for your particular instance, how long do things take to get better? You know, like, you know, when did you notice your tinea getting better? When did you notice your mental health getting better? Was there a time frame for these things? Could you remember those things? So
mentally, I mean, it was like my brain turned on 2 to 3 weeks into the diet. It was like my brain just like came back. And that's kind of a weird thing to say, but it was the truth. I could remember people's names that I had been struggling with for beyond, you know, the 2 to 3 year range. And I could read a book and I was remembering, you know, what I just read. So the mental health aspect, it was quick. As far as everything else, you know, the gut issues that I kind of had, it took a little bit. I never experienced extreme diarrhea. And I think maybe it's because I had gone to the animal base prior to. But yeah, it didn't take long for me personally.
Was there some level of skepticism, and were you ever surprised at some point? Because a lot of people will hear about this carnivore diet and say, it's just a bunch of people making it up. It's you know, it can't work. Or were you going in believing like this is definitely going to work for me? Or was it just kind of like a little bit sort of skeptical?
I think anytime we kind of step into something that we haven't fully experienced, we're a little bit skeptical a little bit. But I had, in my opinion, I had tried everything but this. So I was like, and I had done the research. I had listened to all you guys, and I was like, I know this will work. I have to throw somebody else. There's a nutrition with Judy. I don't know if you heard of her, but she's Judy extremely intelligent as well.
Yeah, I know Judy. She's real nice. I like Judy. Yeah.
So yeah, I felt like I had done the legwork, and I was like, this will work.
Yeah. Were you pleasantly surprised when you started to see these things improve? Was it pretty exciting, or what was it like for you?
Oh, I mean, it was life-changing, completely turned my life around, you know, in my life, my wife's life, everyone around me. Cause you know, when you're going through something, it's not just you, it's your family. It's my gym community. There's many things. So yeah, it was life-changing.
Yeah,
life-saving.
A lot of people, because you mentioned, you know, libido and things like that. A lot of people say, well, low carb diets are going to drive your testosterone down and harm your libido and things like that. Did you find something different with that?
Yeah, I would say it's the exact opposite. So I had low libido and ED issues. I had all those issues when I was doing the carbs, when I was doing all of that. And then now it's completely kind of flipped around. So I would have to push back on that.
Yeah, as would I. And I think a lot of people that have been on the carnivore would seriously refute that sort of theory. It's interesting, if you go back to the early, turn of the 20th century, and you've got the Kellogg brothers telling everybody not to eat red meat and eat all this grain because they didn't want people having sex or impure thoughts or masturbating because they felt red meat was too much of a, I don't know, an aphrodisiac, or it was a lust driving food, which I think it is. I think it is, works that way. And I think, and that's really a sign of health. I mean, humans are just, in order for our species to continue on, we have to have sex, and you got to be healthy enough to do that, and use that as an indication that you're healthy. And that's something I remember as a medical student, when I was walking around rounding, the attending physician at the time would point out, he said, look, this guy has an interest in sex again. You can tell he's getting healthier. And that's often a sign of that. So that's good to see. Well, unfortunately, we are running out of time, Trevor. It's been great chatting with you. Are you on social media, or do you do any of that stuff, or are you interested in sharing where people can go to find out more or contact you?
Yeah, so I am on social media, mainly Instagram, and it's just Trevor Lee 89. Lee being my middle name, and 89 when I was born. So I try to put everything out there. I am truthful, try to be. So sometimes, it might be received a little hard, but I believe we need that as well. Okay, so World Carnivore Month is coming up January 1st, the 6th annual one. Are you participating this year? I assume you are. Oh, absolutely. Good for you. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, great. It's been awesome. Good luck to you, Trevor. Thanks for sharing your story, and continued happiness to you and your family and that type of stuff. And good luck with your business. Thanks for being out there and sharing your story, because more people need to hear this stuff. And the more people that share this stuff, the more we can affect more people, and hopefully change the society around us to hopefully a better, healthier population. So thanks again, man. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. All right, guys. See you guys tomorrow. Everybody, take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye now. Hey, folks. It's Dr. ShawnBaker here. If you guys are enjoying these success stories, well, you can become your own success story. You can do that by heading over to Carnivore.diet. You can sign up for a free 30-day trial and get started today. We're looking forward to supporting you. Our community is wonderful, and we'd love to see your success.